Okay. All right, welcome everyone to our city council meeting tonight, May 5th at 2026. We will start our meeting off tonight with an invocation or thought and then the Pledge of Allegiance by council member Neighbor.
Tonight, I'm going to just share a thought, and that thought is I've been in the council now for 90 days, and I've had an opportunity to meet and interview most of the administrative staff members. And my impressions there have been very positive. I'm also going through this first cycle of truth and taxation. I recently attended the Utah League of Cities and Towns. They had some very outstanding training there that helped me, and I shared it with the council and with the staff on making sure this new process that we're going through is handled in the right way and in the right legal way. So it's been a very enlightening and experience these last 90 days, and I'm happy that I'm a part of the council to make contributions in helping the city operate in a more effective way. So that's my thought for today. Okay.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, council member Neighbor. Moving on to our consent agenda, ask if anyone has any conflicts of interest they'd like to disclose tonight. Okay, not seeing any. We'll move on to the active agenda. Now we're going to open up the meeting for public comments. If you're here to make comments on the budget or on the proposed tax increase, we'd ask you to wait. We're going to do a presentation on our proposal of why we advertise the 5% increase and what it's for, and then there'll be a public hearing after we do our presentation. But now is the time to come and make comments on anything other than the budget. If you want to come up to the microphone and you can leave your comments, keep them to 5 minutes or less, and stay if you're a resident in North Ogden and your name.
Jim Urey, resident of North Ogden. I have a few questions and maybe some recommendations. First question is this new turning lane that's going to be up on about 3100. Is our taxes paying for that? Because my understanding is that the state road ends about where Lee's is. So years ago, when we widened it on the other side, we had I was on the council then, we had to buy those houses. Are we buying those houses and widening that lane?
Oh, we can answer it real quick. The houses have already been bought by with WACOG funds, and most of the widening is being done by WACOG.
And then impact fees.
And impact fees.
Yeah.
Okay. Second thing, up by my house in North Ogden, there's a welcome to North Ogden sign. If I come out of my driveway, not only does that sign block my view of any cars that are coming around the corner, but also the trees that are the oak trees that are there in the summertime block the view, and we can't see anything. And I think it would be wise to, if you could, to move the sign to the other side of the road where nobody's making a turn. And along with that, for years and years, if you come up Fruitland Drive and you go to make a left-hand or a right-hand turn, you can't see around the Malin property. For years and years, Ned Malin would never sell any of that property. Ned Malin's dead. His wife's dead. His kids are living in the homes now. I think it'd be wise to approach him and see if we could cut that corner so that people could see around it when they. I walk along there frequently, and I watch, and you can't imagine the number of cars that come up and they're halfway out in the road before they stop or even make it. Some of them don't even stop. Now, along with that, I have a question about every morning in front of my house on the west side of the road facing south is a police car parked. Then it goes in the afternoon, it goes to the other side of road facing north. Nobody's ever in the car. Anybody, but because as I walk along there, I don't see the traffic slowing down because people know that there's nobody in that car. Okay. Now, I was made aware today, Weber Basin Water is allowing an incentive to people to install water-saving landscaping. You can go to Weber Basin Water, look for conservation, and you can see the cities that are in that. $2.50 a square foot in incentive to change your landscaping if you don't live in North Ogden. If you live in North Ogden, you get $1.25. Why? Because the city council has not passed an ordinance regarding, that's what it says on their website. Now, whether you've passed one or not, it'd be nice to know. Okay, and you can answer that, I hope, today. Other thing I'd like to address is maybe, and I don't want to, I think that there'd be incentives. If you'd make some incentives instead of for people to save water. I'm going to tell you something that my wife and I've done for 2 years now. We're just there by ourselves. And some of you in the audience and some of you may think that it's gross, but it isn't. If we use our restroom and we just pee, we don't flush the toilet until somebody has to defecate. And we've saved water, and we're not even using the minimum amount of water that we're being charged for. So I'm asking you to look at and Steve's a bright mind with finances. Steve, maybe you could come up with an idea to really incentivize people to save water. And I know there is a punishment for those people that use too much water. Make that punishment a little higher, and then cut the rate on the people that are in saving water. Okay. And the other things that I have to talk about are tax related, so I'll wait till those. But if you can give me some answers on some of those things, just keep the people, everybody in the city advised what's happening. You know, I wake up and there's a police car out in front of my house. What's he doing there? Oh, there's nobody in there, so I can ask him. Okay.
Thank you, Jim. And we'll pass on your comments to the Streets Department. And I think Councilmember Pulver has a good answer for Weber Basin, if you'd like to share it.
Yeah, so I looked into that too because why not? But the biggest thing is that the city would have to pay for administration of that program. So it would require us to spend money, and a lot of money, because we have to oversee all of that development, or not development, but switching and all the other things, so that it takes away, if we don't hire somebody else, then that takes away from the employee doing what they're supposed to do. So we kind of balanced it out, and we're like, it doesn't make financial sense to go hire somebody else and or take time away from employees that are supposed to be doing planning, road, whatever. So that's why we haven't done it. And I think that's something that they need to be a little bit more specific on, because they kind of leave it up. They kind of say, oh, well, the city's the bad guy. Well, no, Weber Basin's the bad guy for not just, oh, well, you have to administer it, but we'll pay the money. I'm like, oh, great. So that's another one of those pass the buck type things. Well, there is a water conservation ordinance, but the thing is that we have to, if that we are part of that, then we would have to administer it. So we'd still have to, even if the ordinance was there, we'd have to administer it. Correct. The landscape ordinance still requires us to administer that program.
But we'll look. Yep, we'll look into it again. Okay, seeing no additional comments and nobody on Zoom. Right. Okay, we'll move on to Item number 3, which is the certification of compliance with truth and taxation requirements, and this will be presented by Ryan. You get to read all this.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, Council, I'm just going to read a certification of all of the public notices that we have met for this meeting here today. I hereby certify that all noticing, posting, and public access requirements have been completed in accordance with Utah Code for Truth and Taxation processes. Class A notice was published on 4/21/2026. I would like to note and apologize that I made an error on number 3 on the agenda, and I said the 28th. It was the 21st. You can see that on the public notice website that it was posted on that day. Additionally, it was posted on the Utah Notice website on 4/21/2026. It was also posted on the city website, including links with tax information on 4/21/2026. A detailed tax information page was created by myself and John Call, and it was accessible on 4/21/2026. The 14-day noticing requirement was thereby met. Virtual meeting access and instructions were posted both on 4/21 and on 4/30/2026. The property tax impact schedule was available online and at the hearing on 4/21/2026 and today's date, May 5th, 2026. The State Tax Commission and county was notified of tonight's hearing by Peter Brown, our finance director, on 5/5/2026. And that is all of the certifications that I needed to make for this truth and taxation process.
Okay, thank you. Item number 4 is the official announcement of an intent to consider property tax increase. And as we go through this, for any of you that have been involved in years past, just to give a little bit, as Mayor Berube used to call color, our state legislature this last year passed a new bill, I think it's House Bill 236. I shouldn't try to stay bills off the top of my head. But in February, they came out with this new law that says cities will now have to pass and adopt a new tax rate increase the first meeting in May. So in a little over a month and a half, we had to put our budget together and state, and this was going to be the first time as a council we have seen this budget, but we have to put it together and state we're going to raise taxes in August and give the public up until from now until August to make comments on whether or not you want to support a tax increase. As you're going to find out, this is the first time we've seen the full budget as a council, and this is staff's recommendation, and we had to advertise it clear back in April. So that's why it kind of seems rushed, is because we were told that we have to do this in May, first meeting in May. So now, yes.
And Mayor, and you're correct. We need to do all this. The official vote, which will implement it, will still be in August. It's just the notification process is now 3 months as opposed to 2 weeks.
Okay, so I'll read this official announcement or the formal announcement that North Ogden City is considering a property tax rate that exceeds the certified tax rate, which we don't have yet. The county hasn't given us our certified tax rate, so we don't even have that information, but it's as required by Utah Code 59-2-919. So North Ogden City is proposing to increase its property tax revenue. North Ogden City tax on a $535,000 home, the 2025 average value residence would increase from $383.70 to $402.83, which is $19.13 per year. North Ogden City tax on a $535,000 business would increase from $697.64 to $732.42, which is $34.78 per year. If the proposed budget is approved, North Ogden City would receive an additional $149,854 in property tax revenue per year as a result of the tax increase. If the proposed budget is approved, North Ogden City would increase its property tax budgeted revenue by 5% above last year's property tax budgeted revenue, excluding eligible new growth. All right, so now we're moving to the required truth and taxation disclosures. And our presenter is going to be Peter Brown, our finance director.
Some of this will be a little redundant. Just bear with us as we move through this. Truth and taxation disclosures require for myself as the budget officer of the city to alert the citizens that we are going to propose a property tax increase of 5% over prior year's budget, excluding new growth. The amount will be, Mayor said 149,000 and some change. I'm rounding up in our budget to 150,000. So if you see that difference, that's why we're just rounding to the nearest thousand. Tonight's discussion is a proposal that is tentative. It cannot be implemented until the following is met. We will be passing an interim budget prior to June 30th that will exclude obligations of the proposed property tax increase until, one, the required public meetings are held and disclosures are met. Two, the city council adopts the proposed tax increase. And three, the city holds a truth and taxation meeting in August, which date must be set by June 1st with Weber County and the Utah State Tax Commission, and the state certifies the rate by September 1st. So in essence, this is the first, like Mayor said, this is the first time that the council is looking at a budget. It's preliminary. We're going to have some opportunities to discuss, to look at some things. We have some areas we're still working on, and then we will essentially kind of repeat this process again in June to adopt an interim budget. That budget will not allow us to obligate any funds for the proposed tax increase until and unless the property tax rate is approved and certified by the State Tax Commission.
Okay, so that's everything on that item.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Item number 6 is a presentation of the tentative budget, and this is the presentation and overview of the proposed tentative budget for fiscal year 2026, 2027, and our presenter is Peter Brown, our finance director.
John, if you could, there we go. Are you using the one that I sent to, that was attached to the meeting?
It was the one in the packet, yeah.
Okay, that should be fine.
Real quick, if anyone would like a physical copy, we do have a couple copies up here, and then we also have some physical copies of the budget sheet too. I think we have 5 copies, right? So, yeah.
Copies of the budget. If any-
Hold on here, so I can follow along. I'll just follow off the screen here. All right, the city, and just back up one more. I just wanted to just say one thing. We're doing a budget review, and we're looking at highlights of the budget. So I'm not going to go by every fund and every line item tonight. A lot of it is we're still sort of noodling through a few things. When we do the interim budget, I will ensure that we go through everything piecemeal to cover ourselves. What tonight's presentation is for is to look at the highlights of our proposed budget so that you have an opportunity to discuss and to look at the major things that we're sort of proposing that might need your input. So we can go to the next screen. We're proposing that general taxes be 9.66 million, which includes a $3.25 million property tax amount with a rate that goes up by 5%. That's 150,000. What this does is it covers one new CSO position, or community support officer. Is that what it's called? It's community service officer, and a vehicle. It includes software to help with cybersecurity, and there's a little bit of increase on there, or the rest. Sorry, if you see an increase in the property tax, that's not the 150,000. That's related to growth and of the amount that we get on property taxes. So in new houses, new businesses, things like that, we just sort of receive that without a rate increase. The next thing we're proposing is $5.04 million in sales tax. And what we've done this year is we looked at our CPI, or our inflation rates over a month, or over a year's time, so April to April essentially, and then doing an average, we came up with 3.3%. If you've been watching inflation, it's kind of been going up and down and up again, and we've tagged that to that CPI average, and that's what's given us that 5.04 million.
So Peter, that's from you said 3.3 times what our guess is for this current fiscal year.
Correct. It's a
Okay.
guess. Yeah. That percentage is based upon prior year's budget. There is a a line in there called tax administrative costs. This is sort of money that the state, maybe it's the county. I think it's the county that holds it back. State holds it back for administrative purposes, and you'll see it as a negative amount in the budget, and so it's sort of like it nets out. You add those two lines together, that's what we actually receive in cash from the state sales tax. Other taxes in our budget we're looking at either a flat, we're keeping it the same, or we did a 4-year average and put that in there as well. That includes our utility taxes and our motor vehicle taxes and some other smaller taxes. Next screen. Our licenses and permits, again, these things don't change a whole lot, so we budgeted them flat or averaged them. Our intergovernmental funds, this is the money that we receive from the state for roads that are classified as B and C. That's about $1 million. We budgeted a slight increase at 1%. We have reduced our intergovernmental revenue from Weber schools because we anticipate we're going to be down a resource officer. So you'll see that decrease there in the budget. Charges for services, again, we budgeted these things flat with a slight increase in excavation permits. Fines and forfeitures, we see that as a slight increase in fines, 2%, because we've seen that sort of ramp up just a little bit year over year, probably related to inflation. And then our miscellaneous revenue, these are revenues that aren't easily classified. We have rents in there. We also, if we have any sorts of sale of supplies, we put those in there as well. We are anticipating some rents on a Verizon tower, which is giving us a $20,000 increase in that budget. I do want to point out that if you're trying to compare it to last year, you're going to be like, what happened to the $600,000? That was in the wrong line. We anticipate for the final 2026 budget that we're going to look at for next month that will move that into its appropriate line in the motor pool. So that's why you're going to be like, well, why has that gone down so much? That's why. So next one. The other parts of our revenue to be considered are investments, which we try to tack to current rates. We have a big jump from last year, which was a low figure estimate. Probably the lower than we should have, and so we're trying to make that a little more reasonable. Contributions we have some things that we like to do, but we don't necessarily have the tax dollars to pay for them. In the parks, some of our police operations, we have donations there as well as a grant for mental wellness. And then the final piece of this is a fund balance. And this is what we do is we sort of look at prior year fund balances, and we have a rainy day fund balance that we take a look at. A lot of that's capital related. And so we wanted to look at using some of that to cover capital transfers into the capital fund. So that is revenue. I think if you have any questions, you can jump in, or do you want to wait till?
I'd say if anyone has
Yeah.
a question,
That'd be a good place to stop and ask questions.
Just from this presentation, you said that we'd be down a resource officer. Can you tell us more about that?
Just what I was told. There was over at one of the schools, I think we're down one, and so we're not getting the reimbursements from Weber.
Was that a cut that
Weber School District is looking to do their own program and not contract with this local school cities
It,
anymore.
it might still happen, but in the budget, we wanted to sort of take the worst case scenario, if that makes sense.
Is that a correct explanation, Chief? Yeah, please.
So this is a negotiation year for SROs throughout all of Weaver County. So each city proposes how much it costs to have a school resource officer. Some cities have multiple school resource officers. We only have one. And so we've been in negotiations with them. I just got an email today for a counter proposal from the school district, and they're doing just what the mayor said. They're looking to cut back on school resource officers in multiple cities. They've actually mentioned South Ogden and North Ogden, and they will supplement that position with whatever they decide to choose, and that's up to the school district. We negotiated back and forth. We were very reasonable with them, but it's a possibility, a high likelihood, actually, that we will lose that school resource position, which is to make everyone feel comfortable. That officer goes back into patrol. They don't supplement the cost of wages and benefits anymore. We have one more officer on the street, which is good, and we will always respond to the school. How the school decides or the school district decides to move forward, whether it be private security, the Guardian program, which has been presented by the state, or a combination of both, is really up to them. And I do not have that information yet. I was in the email today, just before I walked in. It was about 4:30. The email stated from the school board, the district board, that they will be reaching out to each individual city to let them know what their intentions are. That's still part of the negotiation. So Peter and the staff are trying to be conservative and say, hey, this might happen. And that's why we would have that situation. Any other questions?
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So you were talking about fund balance. I guess the question is that from the previous, is that what we were talking about before, where it's coming from the previous year's surplus? And I put that in air quotes.
Yeah, I mean, this is fund reserve. Most of it's
Is it
tied,
all of it or part of it or?
it's all fund reserve, but it's all tied to capital.
Right. So it's okay. So to me, I just want to make sure, and what you just stated there is very important for people that, like myself, that don't understand accounting rules. That's not necessarily money in your pocket per se.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this is money that was in our pocket last year or the year before, and we are looking to utilize that. And as we go down the list, and you see when I get to transfers, you'll see that similar amount. We're going to transfer that out into the capital fund, and so it's sort of kind of pays for itself that way, if that makes sense. That's why we're doing it that way.
On the estimated growth, what was the number this year that we decided, and was it flat? Was it slightly up for property tax?
Oh.
So new builds.
I have $100,000 plug in there, but we're not going to get that number until next month, I believe. And they'll actually give that to us. So when we get that number, that firm number, we'll actually put that into the budget. So for now, I'm just sort of putting an average, what we
Kind of a
had in the
4-year
past.
average-ish thing.
Yeah, I think it's like 92,000
Okay.
is the amount. So, but I wouldn't hang my hat on that amount. That,
So 1 to 2 months before we actually know that growth number.
well,
or-
correct. Yeah,
or
we're going
longer
to get
than
that
that.
number next month.
The new builds.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a dollar.
Yeah, they give us an actual dollar figure. I think last year was 170 maybe, or 117. That's big. It had a 7 in there somewhere. Okay. All right, go to the next. So on our general fund overviews, on our expenditures, this is sort of a big picture slide here to sort of talk a little bit about the big buckets in expenditures. The first is salaries and wages. We went through a quantitative market study, and after we sort of went through that procedure, I know we've talked about it in councils past in terms of what that is and what that looks like. We essentially took the quantitative number and just filled it in. We still need to refine that. So there's an opportunity for the council to weigh in on that, and we will tie whatever increase or you prefer, and we'll tie that to the budget when you get around to sort of talking about that. But what you see in there right now is just that market rate that we had determined, and we put it in those lines. And so you'll see some of the budgets and salaries and benefits look higher than maybe they should. That's why. So we anticipate that once we go through the whole juggling process of discussing it, it will likely come down a little bit. The second one is that benefits, and this is all almost related to healthcare costs, have gone up 8% with our health insurance benefits. And so you'll see that factored in the budget as well. There are a couple of new departments that we are proposing for consideration. One is the Emergency Services Department, and that's not new expenses. That's just classing existing expenses from mostly my department. Our EMS manager, Casey Hunsaker, we're trying to just isolate those costs better. He's both the treasurer and the emergency services director. I mean, manager is probably not the right word, director. And so there is a small budget in there to show those expenses for what we have to operate emergency services for the city. And you'll notice in the budget, it still says finance on the title. People have been pointing that out. Hey, how come it doesn't say emergency services? I got some software things I've got to work out. So hopefully when we do the interim budget, we'll have that title correct, and you won't have two finance departments. You'll see one that says finance and one that says emergency services. The other one's the amphitheater department. And we created that one because we are seeing some interest, revenue, movement by the community to use that amphitheater more. And we wanted to start isolating those costs a little bit so that we can start tracking what it would take to sort of at least cover operationally the amphitheater, its maintenance, its upkeep, and plus any of the operations it would take to run programs there. So you'll see that there. And it's like the other one, it's also labeled parks. So just, you're going to see two departments that say parks. One's our parks and one's the amphitheater. It's pretty clear once you get into the details which one is which. Excuse me. The next thing is sort of to note, because people have questions on this, we have a area in our budget for administrative offsets. And what that really is that when you think about that, we have a lot of different departments and funds and I'll just put it this way: our water, our sewer, our solid waste, our storm drain funds, they operate on their own unique budgets. But they also get lots of services and supports from the general fund, mostly in terms of staff time. My time, John's time, recorder's time, HR. We're doing services on behalf of those funds. So this shows up in the budget as it looks like a negative expense or a credit. And that's just sort of the way we charge these other funds for the services that we provide for on behalf of them. And altogether, I thought it would be helpful to just give everybody the understanding that it's about $1.6 million worth of support and services that we provide to our enterprise funds.
So it's essentially overhead that we allocate back to them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Overhead reallocations is another way to say it. The final one in the general fund is transfers. I sort of talked about, we're taking some money from prior years. We're going to transfer over into capital funds, roads, and things of that nature for use. We have a $572,000 debt service piece where we have to, that's sort of our mortgage payment on this building that was finished a couple years ago. And then we're proposing a $31,000 transfer of operation funds to help cover our Cherry Days event.
And it should be 450K for roads.
Oh, I thought I fixed that one.
That's right.
I
just
fixed
pointing
a
that
few
out.
others, but I didn't fix that one. That's 450K, not $450. That's almost worth the cost of talking about it right there. So, okay. Some other highlights, if you're going through the budget, you'll notice that the council budget is down 25%. That's because we do elections every other year, and next year we're not doing elections. So we're not going to put that in the budget. Already talked about emergency management, but it's about $19,500 and it's reclassed from other departments. When people see our non-departmental department, they go, what's a non-departmental department? Think of that as sort of costs that are overhead that don't necessarily fit into one department. For us, it's primarily IT services, but we also put some things in there related to like when somebody retires, we have some amounts in there that will help cover the costs of paying them out when they retire. And then we also put our insurance amounts in there. That's about $600,000 that we pay for insurance for all of our liability, property insurance. And you'll see that in the non-departmental category. In our buildings and grounds department, you'll see the administrative offsets kind of shifting. People go, why'd you do that? Well, we're in the process of trying to reallocate those a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's going to go from one hand to the other. It doesn't change that $1.6 million. It's just moving the way in which we're calculating it from one department to another. In this case, we're charging more to another department and less to this one. And or the other way around. And one's going up, one's going down. I don't have the exact details in this slide deck. Next, lease is up 7%. And again, this is related to market wages. But as we go through and refine this, that might come down a little bit. In our planning department, we are still trying to contemplate the uses for Placer AI. This was a program that we purchased last year to help us sort of track market activity. Best way to put it is when a bunch of people come to the city for like cherry days, it helps us understand whether they stop at Maverick or Smith's, and it just gives us some demographic understanding. We think it's useful. We're trying to figure out whether it's necessary. And so it's sort of, and we're talking about, was it $25,000, 28,000, 29? In that kind of range, 25 to $30,000 is what we're talking about there. Our building inspection, we have that department down because we're going to be down one part-time employee. Our business or our building inspection department has learned how to do more with less. And so that's that's kind of reflecting there. We have someone that's retiring, I think twice. This will be a second retirement. So that's being reflected in the budget. The public safety CSO role, sort of already talked about this one. This is the one that's tied to the property tax increase. And so what does a CSO individual do that goes out and helps us with looking at compliance for city code? This is the person that responds if you've got a vicious dog that's running loose in the neighborhood. That's kind of I think, is that correct, Chief? Something like that?
They handle our evidence, report writing. They do a lot of the administrative portion of a police officer's job, half the cost. It's return on our investment to pay someone half what we pay them for wages and benefits and vehicles. And they do a lot of, they pick up a lot of the slack.
Next slide. Our streets department, like I said, with the revenue, the expenditure side of our vehicles will be moved to another fund. That's from this year. But if you're looking at it and going, where's that $600,000 expense? It's because we're moving it into the motor pool where it should be. You can blame your finance director on that because somebody said general fund. They meant anything but the enterprise funds. And I was thinking it meant the general fund, Fund 10. So that's a rookie mistake. And hopefully we'll repeat that again. Our adjusted budget for streets is up 12%. We're factoring in some street light maintenance. Some of that gets paid back from development. And so it's not all coming out of, the city's funds. But we're also sort of looking at doing some parking lot maintenance as well that needs to be done primarily at our parks, but also our public works facility. Public Works is the next department, and this is where that restructured offset cost I talked about with the buildings and grounds. And so it's kind of just bouncing out there a little bit. And it's slightly down due to just some equipment that there's asked for 1 year, but not the next. And and some other cost reductions. Our next department's community events, and it's down due to we had some ramp grants in the past that we don't anticipate. We're going to get ramp money, but it's not going to go for this particular project. And so that's why you're going to see that down. And then the final one is our amphitheater. This is our new department. And we are factoring in $22,000 in expenses based upon $31,000 in revenue expectations. So we've got a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a profit in there because it's not really. An example would be we've been kind of going back and forth on like staff time to do some of these things. And we're trying to get a good sort of like estimate of what it would take to manage this program. And right now we're sort of looking at about $30,000. And this is what's it going to look like in not so much this year, but what's it going to be like in 2 or 3 years once things kind of settle in. And we have these programs being used year over year, and we've sort of figured out how to run the operations. Then what's it going to cost on staff time? So it's not in the budget yet. But this has been a question people have asked about, and they're going, well, how much staff time? We're factoring about $30,000. And so, as you can see, we still have some room on the revenue side to make this at least pay for itself operationally. Next slide. Oh, I guess let's go back. So this is sort of the recap of the general fund. This is a good place to stop if there's any questions.
Yeah, Councilmember Pulver.
I guess the one thing that I just want to make sure there are some things in the expenditures that are paid through capital, right? That's why we have some trade-offs going back and forth, right? Or am I
paid for by capital?
Right, the capital improvements, some of them either through Public Works, et cetera, those are being paid back from the capital improvement fund. Yes or no?
Not so much in Fund 10 or in the general fund, but in the capital fund, they get paid back by development more.
Okay.
So I guess
some of the projects
in streets
Yeah.
does get reimbursed by development.
Okay, that's what. Yeah, there's several things in there that I just wanted to, and that's kind of where I'm at. I think the tick and tie, and that's not for this briefing, but just to make sure that we're ticking and tying the projects that we're expecting to see next year with, expenditure, and then where it comes out of, sort of what you did, I think, for the budget committee in that one piece of paper, but transfers going back and forth. But anyway, we don't have to talk about it here. But I think
Right now the way we've structured that too is it sort of nets out. In other words, because it's almost a credit against that expenditure.
Right.
So it's easy to track it. So whatever you see in that line, that's going to be net of the reimbursement.
Okay.
So that'll help you there.
And then just a point of clarification, I think for the amphitheater is that the labor costs that could be up to $300K are not They're basically just being pulled off of something else. And so it's not an extra 300K.
I think you meant to
says
say
30.
30K.
30, sorry.
Yeah,
300? Yeah, that'd be a
Did
little.
I say 300?
No, me, I
did.
said, I said.
Oh.
We just like to add zeros up
Yeah,
there.
we had zeros everywhere. But so that's not a new cost. That's just a
Correct. We have
reallocation.
we have a
Okay,
staff member who's
right. Just want to make sure people
taking
understand.
this on as sort of a side project right now.
Okay.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
When you were explaining, I really like, by the way, how you just highlighted a few things from each department on the general fund. I've been studying the 45 pages of it, but this is really great to see just the simplified highlights laid out like this. I love how you did that. So thank you. And for the explanation for everyone in the room who hasn't spent all this time maybe like we have studying this giant document, but when you were going through each one of these and which was up and which was down, just for clarification for me, the community events one, you said it was down due to ramp grant expectations. So when you say it's down, that means we won't have as much spending because we are getting a ramp grant this year.
no, it means that when we talk about grants, and this can be kind of confusing, when you have a grant, you have the revenue piece of it and the expenditure piece of it.
The revenue's going down.
So
is
the
what you're saying.
revenue is going down on the one
Okay.
side, and then so we won't spend it on the expenditure
Okay.
side.
Some of these other sections were labeled as expenses going down, but this was revenue going down.
Oh, does it say revenue?
No, I'm asking,
Oh.
is that what you mean?
Well,
Yes. Yes.
it,
Did
it,
not
yes,
Revenue
it's
and the
revenue
spending.
going down that we can't spend. So that's why it's
I see.
that's why it's going
Okay,
down.
I misunderstood that. So thank you for that
It's
explanation.
okay.
Yeah.
That can be grants can be kind of confusing that way. A lot of people think that I always think of grant money as an expense, not a revenue source, because it has to match. You spend what you earn. So usually get in trouble if you take grant money you don't spend. Okay. Go to the next slide. So now we're gonna move over to the capital budget. And again, we're gonna do overview here, which in my terms is sort of the big changes, the big things that people are going to look at and go, why is this up? Why is this down? Just generally speaking, we've got interest in there at $100,000, grants at 5 million. And again, like I explained earlier, when you see $5 million in grant revenue, expect to see $5 million in grant expenditures. And so you'll sort of see that down this list here. Impact fees are at 1.8 million, and those are fees that are going to get transferred from our impact fee funds to pay for largely the community pond that we've got going in here west of Washington. Transportation utility fee. These are the fees that we're now paying in our monthly bill that is targeted only for roads. And so it gets isolated in the transportation utility fund as a revenue source. And then we take that amount, move it over to capital, and then we isolate that 1.4 million in roads projects so that we make sure that we're not misallocating that for anything other than roads usage. We have 2.15 million in fund transfers. Those are funds from the water and the general fund. Already talked about the general fund monies coming over. We have some amounts from the water fund, which will come over to help pay for some projects as well. And then there's a use of balance similar to what I had talked about with the general fund that we will pull from. One thing with the capital funds is that it kind of ebbs and flows. Some years we'll have the money. We won't get the projects completed. Projects take multiple months, sometimes multiple years. And we have a deadline, and that's June 30th. And sometimes we'll anticipate to spend something, particularly in the summer. A lot of our projects happen during June and July, and we just run out of runway. So we're looking at that 1.53 million in terms of, well, we didn't quite get to it. We're not going to quite get to it this year. So we're going to roll it over to next year. That's probably the easiest way to think about that. Go to the next slide.
Which line is that? The 1.53?
That's the bottom one. That's just,
No, right on the budget sheet.
oh,
Just say 404 something, right?
it's actually, it's kind of a,
Conglomerate.
I've got a conglomerate of a revenue line and an expenditure line. I need to fix that. It makes more sense just to be an expenditure line.
Okay.
So it'll be in the bottom expenses. The Citizen Budget Committee had asked, it's not on the slide deck, but I figured it would be useful to at least talk about it. Do I have it in my, yeah. So I don't have it in the slide deck, but I'll go ahead and talk through it because it was asked last week about what are these projects going for? So let me just kind of briefly go through that. For our parks, we're looking at 390,000 for Barker Park to improve that park, to make it better, to improve that north lot. We're looking at landscaping costs for all of our parks, about $170,000. We have a trails project that's grant funded for 330,000. We are improving or completely replacing the Oak Lawn parking lot for 180,000. So like the other parking lots, it's just sort of a fix.
Yeah.
Fix them up, patch them. This is a full redo.
Close.
On our city building improvements, we have about $170,000 in just general improvements. Think about that as replacing an HVAC unit or fixing some sort of component of the building. We have a $270,000 in public works parking lot. That's another parking lot they're going to look at redoing. $15,000 in lighting and $15,000 to improve the senior center. And that's, I think, carpet and some paint and some things like that, if I'm not mistaken. We have a project for the community pond. It's $3 million. That project is coming from impact fees as well as from grants. We've got road and sidewalk projects, $450,000 for reconstruction and repair, $1.4 million in transportation utility fee road type projects, and then a $26,000 improvement to a crosswalk at 1700 North. And then the final category I'll call development. And a lot of these things are paid for by developers, by impact fees. We have $750,000 to finish the 450 East acquisition to finish widening that road, and $1 million for the actual widening of that road. And we've got 1.3 million for the Mountain Road acquisition. And again, these are paid by impact fees, developers, and grants. And so those are the projects that we're looking at spending next year in our capital projects. So this is a good opportunity. If you have any questions about capital, to ask or talk about. Or
Peter, do you remember how much we are getting from the federal government for the community pond? What Blake Moore's office had said they were going to get us?
1.5 million, I want to say. Just 1 million? 1 million. But the rest of it's going to come out of impact fees for stormwater.
And we have a ramp grant still for that one.
Yes. Yeah. So sorry, what was the federal number?
1 million.
1 million?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it'd be good, I know it's not for this meeting, but to kind of just for those two big projects that are coming, community pond and then the widening, just to say, what's left, what's going to be, coming in versus what we're going to have to spend as a net capital coming out of our own pocket, so to speak. Because I know a lot of money is going back and forth, the big numbers that, 300, 3 million here, 1 million there. But is that some of it I understand is coming from grants and WACOG and other things. And then also
we have some rental amounts. And so,
right.
So when we had the homes for a while, they're occupied.
Right. But I'm just talking about just give me the net, plus, minus,
No,
what are we actually gonna,
That's really good, especially because the project is like acute right now.
yeah.
And it's I don't know if it's over the hump, but it's getting there. And so it'd be good, I think, so I'll bring that next for interim. I'll bring a little schedule that shows you the,
Yeah, and I think the other big things are, especially when you're talking about acquisition, what does that mean? And to me, I know what it means. Does that actually means acquiring the land? And are we ready for that? I guess is the point, or that's the question, because once we get the land, are we going to actually start building the road, meaning Monroe or Mountain Road, or are we just? I guess you know what I'm saying. So that's more of an ethereal thing. I just want to make sure that we're, hey, we're planning for this, but then there's no money from WACOG until 2055. I don't making up a number, but something like that, so we can kind of see.
Okay.
So
that's fair.
So Peter, we've had some significant expenses in the capital expenditure. So I'm looking down at the last line in that category. We still have $1.2 million in reserve there.
We're pulling that amount. There's more than that there, but that's the amount that
It's your budget.
we're budgeting to use for these projects. We can balance the budget in the capital fund. And plus there's a revenue line up at the top too, but I think I got to noodle through that. That's between the two of those, I think that's what
Yeah.
ties out to that
Is this
larger amount.
Is this budget for 26, 27 on capital expenditures one of our greatest expense years for capital improvements? I mean, it looks huge.
$9
but
million.
This is my first time looking at this.
Yeah, I mean, if John, if you go back a slide, it kind of gives you. I kind of went through the projects little by little. I thought I didn't have it in the slide deck; it was in there. But if you go back to the overview, that gives you the sort of it's the next slide. That gives you the expenditure overview. It's about $9 million that
Yeah,
you were
dude.
looking at. We have to sort of, and it doesn't always, like I said, we kind of look at it in 5-year chunks.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because it takes months, if not years, sometimes to finish some of these things. And so,
Yeah.
so when you look at them, a lot of times we're looking at just starting to kick something off, and then it'll kind of flow through an 18-month cycle before it's completed.
So in a project that takes 3 years, does the carry forward balance become the new balance in next year, in the following year budget? How does that work?
So what we do, according to GASB rules, whatever is left over at the end of the fiscal year,
Mhm.
we just carry that forward.
As the budget for next year?
Correct. Now,
Okay.
if it comes back that there's an estimate that we have to say there's a change order,
Mhm.
and our constructor comes back and says, oh, it's going to cost us another $200,000 to finish, we have to come back to council
For that incremental
that
amount.
incremental
Okay,
amount.
okay.
So,
So I just wanted to agree with Councilman Pulver that was speaking previously about a little bit of an overview type of thing. A good example is the road widening on Washington. Recently, there was a social media post. People were going, "Oh man, we're wasting all kinds of taxes on this." Well, we're getting money from WACOG. We're getting money from all the rentals that have been rented out for years. We will eventually get money for the corner of northeast Alberta that is going to be sold to go back into the project. So there's all these components that are together. And, if you look at the actual out of our taxpayers' pockets, it's minimal compared to the amount that we're getting. So I think it'd be awesome to have a little consolidated half pager on that. Community Pond, I think, was another good example of just a little snapshot. Here's exactly where everything is, and it will help everyone feel a little more comfortable with what's happened.
okay.
We had a community pond one at least a year, maybe 2 years ago, but that was before Congress basically, anyway.
Yeah, we've been budgeting for several years, but
Yeah.
the money finally started to flow. So, okay. Any other questions on capital?
I just want to point out that the capital fund is something that um, is nothing surprising. It's nothing new. It's not like reworked every year. This is something I enjoyed learning when I first was in the council that it's a 5 to 10 to 15-year plan that we have been working on every year. And we knew 5 years ago that we were going to be widening 450. None of this is surprising or catching us off guard, or we're not prepared for. This money has been planned, and the plans have been in the works for a long time. So I think that it is a big fund and there's a lot going on there, but it's very thorough.
Next slide. Okay, so we're moving to our special revenue funds here. We've got multiple of them, but these are kind of two highlighted ones that want to talk about here. So our aquatics, our North Shore Aquatics, the pool down here, just by the Maria Montessori School, we're budgeting revenue to be 615,000. I think we're going to be looking at what May does and refine that number a little bit. We think that's going to go up. So we will look at that and hopefully move that number up a little bit in our revenues projections for the pool.
Is that estimated at staying the same, the entrance fee, or increasing?
That's with we've got the
Including-
increase of the fee, but also just looking at performance.
The reservation fees have
Yeah,
gone up,
initially
the
when I had
admission
put this
fees.
in there, I was like, well, let's be a little conservative. But I think we've got some room to move that up.
So it is including the increase
It
of the
is.
fees. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Increase in entrance fee or increase in,
Entrance fee and the group reservation fee, right?
I know we've talked about it. Have you guys voted on it yet? Nope. You haven't voted on it yet. Yeah.
So you're
So-
estimating no change then?
I'm estimating no change because we haven't made the change yet. That's why it's low.
Right, it is lower in the budget this year than it was last year, the admission fees,
Yes, like I said,
because we were conservative.
I'm trying to be conservative,
And once
but
we
I'm looking
change
too
that,
conservative.
okay.
And when May's
Mhm.
over, well, I think we'll have a better sense of what that number is going to be.
And when the
I-
council votes for it to increase, then we'll change the budget, is what you're saying.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. Recognize that with our aquatics program, our expenditures will match. We essentially budget this to be a zero-based budget. And I think in this budget, or maybe it was last year's, this is the first time we're doing no subsidy from the general fund. What I do want to also point out, just what can be kind of confusing to people, is this budget picks up in July and goes all the way to next year and ends in June. So it's kind of this weird budget that takes two different ends of the summer. We did a consolidated report for last year to kind of push those two seasons together. We'll do something similar. I think we'll just continue doing that so that we can see what an actual summer looks like without having the budget year split down the middle.
Yeah.
And that kind of helps give you a better picture of how that season actually performed.
yeah. And one thing to point out is that this is similar to the amphitheater and other things. These are just pulled out. This isn't a specific enterprise fund where aquatic revenue stays in aquatics. This is just, we split it out on purpose, right? This isn't a
Correct.
special,
A special revenue fund is still a general fund,
right?
but it just isolates it better so we can sort of track expenditures and revenues with the understanding that it still can have tax dollars support it. And we have in the past. And same thing with the Cherry Days. We have $31,000 worth of revenues, let's say their sales tax revenues, supporting the Cherry Days event. If it was an enterprise fund, by law, the fees would have to cover the expenses for everything.
So we're not, because I looked back in the audit stuff, and it appears that we're carrying quote balance at the aquatic center, but that's really not the case, right?
If it is, it's not large.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Just make-
It might be $20,000 or $30,000 right now, but it's not large.
yeah. There was, we'll talk later, but that's a weird thing.
And then just pointing out Cherry Days, our income, we're projecting at 72,600. That will be in next year's budget, even though it feels like it's happening soon. It won't. It kicks off kind of in June, but we only budget for it in the 2027 budget season. When you think of it, the thing's not fully expensed and fully over until the July timeframe. And so it all goes into 1 year budget. And then we anticipate matching expenditures of $31,000 to help make this budget work. The more we can get donations, the more we have people, and we've got staff and our event coordinator out there helping us to find donations and sponsorships that can chip into that $31,000 as well.
So just one point of clarification. So on Cherry Days in the Aquatic Center, they're not considered enterprise funds,
Correct.
but are they quasi general fund? Are you saying?
Well, I'm qualifying as special revenue funds, which is just, they are like general funds because they can use
But
tax
they're not
dollars.
part of the truth and taxation budgeting process. No. Right. So that's what, when you
Well,
say general fund,
yeah.
that's what confuses me a little bit. We've separated them out. So the only thing the general fund would be responsible for is if they have a deficit and we have to finance that in a
Correct.
transfer.
Yeah, at the end of the year, when we have our audit, these general funds,
Right.
including capital, get smushed together.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I'm trying to point out here is that they are really, in some respects, part of the same overall group of dollars.
Yeah. Just it's the budget and the financial statements sometimes have a hard time integrating with each other. Yeah. Okay.
This makes it easier for the public to see.
And I agree with you 100%.
Next slide. Our motor pool funds, these are internal revenue funds, which operate like a business, like the water fund, like the sewer fund, meaning that they've got to pay for themselves. And what this particular fund does is it allows us to pool our resources to purchase vehicles, service vehicles for the whole city, and then we charge our funds on the basis of the cost of the vehicles and the service of the vehicles. And there is an amount in there that we put in the tentative budget. We anticipate that's going to change. I'm working on that right now. And when that changes, it'll be presented with the interim budget with that updated amount. And that will flow to the general fund. It'll flow to our water, sewer, stormwater, and our, I want to say it's a solid waste fund. You'll see that sort of spread down to those funds once that gets updated.
Peter, is the motor pool fund generally about the same this year as it has been?
Well, that's what I have in there right now. But in the past, because we had a deficit in there, we were funding both the acquisition costs of some of our equipment and vehicles and the depreciation when really under the rules of full accrual accounting, which is kind of wonky. I don't want to get into the weeds on that, but because it's an internal revenue fund, we're supposed to expense the depreciation, not the capital acquisition. That becomes capitalized.
Yeah.
That's really,
They cancel each other out.
they cancel
If you
each
do
other out. But think of it this way: if I'm buying a bunch of vehicles or a bunch of equipment, it's not going to be necessarily the same every year. But if I take the whole pile of everything that I've got and I add it together and I go, this has got a 5-year life on it. Well, now I have an easy to watch depreciation schedule every single year that's more consistent.
Right.
Yeah. Another question on an account, transportation sales tax fund. Could you give me a little bit more background what that is exactly?
it's part of the state taxing.
Sales tax?
Yeah, it's a part of the state sales tax. It's not a large amount, but it's collected through. In fact, I don't even know exactly at the point where it's being collected, but it's an allocation from the state, and it's considered a transportation sales tax piece that we
So,
isolate and put into its own fund,
Okay.
so it can be only used on transportation projects.
okay. So when businesses set up their sales tax rate, we have a transportation tax, part of that sales tax that they're paying, and we separate that out because it's designated for transportation and can't be in the general fund.
Correct. And it's a small amount, but this is a good opportunity for us to kind of point out that we have a piece of sales tax which comes from the state, which is a sales tax, transportation sales tax. We have the transportation utility fee, which is what our city
Yeah.
charges to pay for roads. We have transportation impact fees, which is what developers pay to help make roads. All of that can come together to help us to
Mhm.
cover our roads cost.
Yeah. John, just a question for you. I thought I had heard you say that transportation sales tax fee is going to be eliminated in 2030. Did I misunderstand that?
That's the local option sales tax fee that
Ah,
Riverdale and a few other cities get to charge. That's going away
okay.
in 2030.
But not this one.
No, not this one. Yeah.
The other, just back to the motor pool fund, and then we can, if you're more questions on motor pool, we can talk about it. The vehicle program, I just want to highlight this for those that are unaware. Right now, we have a vehicle program where we buy a vehicle, use it for a year, and sell it. And that net amount, once we buy and sell, comes out to about $36,000 of expenses. In the past, we actually were able to get some money back on it, but we're looking at the market going, we think it actually might cost us this year. And so we've put $36,000 in the budget. That's the net amount. So that's just to hopefully explain how we buy and sell our vehicles. And that's our non-police vehicles. Those have a different way of doing it. But we're watching that. You know, if the market changes or if there's any sort of weird nuances, we might have to restructure how this is budgeted. Next slide. And we've talked earlier about our enterprise fund. So this is sort of my overview page. And so I'm just going to run through this quickly. So our water, we're anticipating at $4 million, a little over $4 million in revenue, includes a past year of $400,000 we're rolling over. We did not put interest income in the enterprise funds in 2026. It was just an oversight by staff. We'll get that fixed when we do our final amendment next month. But we wanted to make sure we added that in there for our enterprise funds, and you'll see that all the way across the top there. So that'll be added in. We anticipate 3.7 million of expenditures. And what the expenditures typically go for is capital that goes to operate the utility, but a big chunk of it goes to pay for capital projects, increasing our water capacity, wells, water lines, but we also have to fund our depreciation. So when we look at all of our infrastructure, we know it's got a lifespan on it. So we need to kind of backfill when we have to replace those things as they deteriorate. And so that's kind of the difference you'll see in an enterprise fund. You'll see us actually funding everything, including the depreciation of what.
Compliments on that. I noticed that in the enterprise funding depreciation, because a lot of times that doesn't happen. So as you look at the budgets here, you have a surplus each year to help finance that in the future, correct?
Yeah, and plus it also, we will have some projects short one year, but then long the next year. Government accounting isn't as strict about how we budget our enterprise funds. You
Mhm.
look at them as self-containing standalone businesses in that way. And so when we do have anticipated surpluses, we're really trying to make sure that we have enough in there to cover ourselves if we have to go do a large project or a pipe fails or something like that. we
Financing
have that.
depreciation, I think
We
was
have
what you
that. We
said.
have that in there. Our sewer, we anticipate at 3.1 million and 2.5 in expenditures. That includes 755,000 on capital projects. Our stormwater, 1.8 million in revenue, and then our expenditures 1.4, and that includes 745,000 in capital projects. And this is stuff on top of that community pond that we already talked about. We already talked about that. That's considered a stormwater project, but this is on top of that. And then our solid waste fund, this is our garbage. It's the narrowest budget that we have. We're anticipating 1.76 million in revenues and 1.75 in expenses. And only $123 in capital.
I know, I was going to ask that question.
$123,000 in capital projects. This is one we need to probably look at a little closer, make sure our fees are working with all of the changes with the transfer stations and the acquisition by vendors of the Weber County transfer station. We got to make sure this pencils out. So we're going to take another closer look at this before the interim budget is published. Next. So I just wanted to point out when we posted the budget on the 21st, what you got and what you saw published last Thursday includes just some changes. This is just to let you know we're always updating this. It's kind of a working budget. And so we updated $25,000 in revenue for rents and donations. Or sorry, wrong one. We didn't have a budget in place when we published the tentative for looking at how to fully expense the 400 East widening project. So now we've got some tentative numbers in there for what we look at as the likely remaining rents and expenses. There's like only one or two properties I think that we're still dealing with in terms of renting. And then when that's done, it'll roll all that into the project. So that'll be part of that schedule we talked about of the 400 East widening. You'll see some admin fee offsets adjusting. There was an error in the public safety impact fee transfer. On one of the transfer sides, it said 30,000. On the other, it said 31. It's now both 31. We updated the admin sales contribution, the portion that the state takes back when they give us sales tax. It was a little high. We had it 150 and I moved it back to 130. We updated our grant and donation revenues and added $30,000 in that we didn't catch when we published it on the 21st. And then just updated our fund balance use to 592,000. So that's sort of to give you a sense of what changed from the first publishing.
Mhm.
And then the last slide, we're almost done. Okay. Just again, to overview what we're still working on. We're still updating, fine tuning our salaries and wages. We're refining our admin offset costs. We are working on refining our depreciation schedule for the motor pool. We talked a little bit about that. We're going to take a look at our enterprise fund fee schedules to see that they make sense. We think that particularly in garbage, we're going to have to take another look at that. North Shore revenue projections, and this is stuff we've already talked about, but just sort of to bring it all home. Doing some analysis on our roads income and expenditures to make sure we're spending what we're taking in all of our roads funding. Looking at all of our impact fees. So in our impact fee schedule, we have to project forward what we think we're going to spend on our impact fees. We need to match that to the budget as well and make sure and see that we're spending those dollars appropriately year over year. So we're staying ahead of schedule. And then our widening fund that we already talked about. So that's where we're at with our budget. Those are the highlights. Are there any other questions?
You probably explained this already, but on just looking at page 38, the motor pool fund, and just looking at the last page on 39, you probably explained why we're in a deficit there. Is this the acquisition and depreciation problem you're talking about then?
Yeah, where we sort of we're basically doing both sides of the we're expensing both the acquisition
Yeah.
of the capital and the depreciation, and we should only do one of them really.
Are you saying that's an error?
That's an error.
So really there'll be a surplus
An
there.
adjustment, yeah.
Okay.
I suspect it'll adjust. Oh, I don't know, what do I use the word favorably? We'll find less expenditures in those funds when it's all said and done.
Because you've duplicated some of those
Correct.
expenses.
Yes. But we've also left off some depreciation. So I want to hedge myself a little bit
Yeah.
there. When we go through and look at all of our assets, we've got a couple of different schedules we're trying to compare it against.
So when we
That
do
should
the
be-
final, and I know this isn't part of the truth and taxation piece, I don't think this element is, but when we do a final budget here, we won't see a deficit.
Correct.
Okay. That is a question. Is this whole set of budgets part of truth and taxation, or is it just the general fund? It's my understanding it's just the general fund that's part of the truth in taxation.
Motor pools. So and maybe John will be able to correct me if I'm wrong. The truth in taxation, we will be presenting the amount we need to increase, and we have to specifically identify what we're increasing for.
Okay.
So the budget you have in your hand, that everything will be presented there, will be allowed to be spent July 1st. That'll be our budget. And
Yeah.
the truth in taxation in August, we won't be able
Okay.
to do those items of the
Okay,
budget
okay.
until that gets passed.
Okay. You're right. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Yep, you bet.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Peter? Before we move on, did we want the Citizen Budget Committee to make or the recommendations during this part of the presentation?
If they're ready, I would say so.
I know Chair Brian had to leave, or left, but it's like Vice Chair Swanson's here. You're not the vice chair? Oh, okay.
I don't have the recommendations. Brian was here, Phil Swanson, North Ogden resident. Brian was here and he had to leave. So we don't have anything for you. At least I don't have anything to give you. He didn't
I
leave
can
me
read the
anything to
email.
read to you. So I'll make sure that he emails that off to everybody.
And it looks like Councilmember Pulver has his email. So
I can email what at least most the committee was talking about. So I think some of this I think has been fixed. Like the power cost for the water that was in the budget that was too high, right? Let's see. Trying to figure out how to I'll say get out of, but maybe begin an exit plan for the animal shelter, because that's an expense that we're especially when there's only 2 years remaining on the current agreement. Still questioning on the flash vote software. I think we removed that. I think was that the last thing.
Flash vote's out.
Flash vote's out. Okay, and then I think we also saw a radio upgrade that was already done, and that was, I think you fixed that on the spot as well. Let's see. There was a discussion kind of about the motor pool overall, that if all the vehicles aren't necessarily being utilized to the fullest extent, can we avoid purchasing another vehicle for the CSO, and share between departments? That's obviously a philosophical question, but something to think about. You talked about further wage analysis. let's see, comparison. I'm reading on the fly here, so pardon my trying to summarize instead of reading word for word. Let's see. Oh, basically looking at, you know, the park, the programs that use Parks and Rec to, you know, is the soccer program paying for what they need to be? I think we talked a little bit about that with SWAT. That's the same type of thing that I think they're looking at across the board. Review of entry fee to the pool, cost of broadband, and there's some other things in here. But I think for the most part, the budget committee has been going through in real time, and I hope it's been very valuable time saved, not saved per se, but that staff has gone through it. And I know Mr. Swanson and some others have spent an enormous amount of time making analysis and time out of their day to support this. And I think it's a valuable thing, even making some of the tough questions and tough tough conversations. So anyway, so I don't know if that helps or hurts, but I think, you know, Brian had probably had some more, and I know we weren't going long. It's just, there's a lot of stuff in the budget, but anyway, so.
All right. Well, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 7. This will be the presentation of the property tax impact schedule, and be presented by Peter Brown, our finance director.
We've already talked about this sort of generally, but this is the sort of the legislative piece of it. And I'll just read it. The property tax impact schedule for the tentative budget for North Ogden City. In compliance with Utah Code generally and 59-2-924AB as amended by HB 236 during the 2026 legislative session, North Ogden City hereby identifies the property tax impact schedule. The following numbers are based on 2025 values. The ad valorem tax revenue generated by the proposed tax increase is $149,854. The approximate percentage increase in tax rate is 5% from 0.001304 to 0.001369. The approximate percentage increase to the amount of property taxes paid on an average residence is 5%, or $19.13 per year. The approximate percentage increase to the amount of property taxes paid on a commercial property is 5%, or $34.78 per year. The following departments will be affected by the proposed tax rate increase with corresponding operational impact required under 59-2-924AB. First is public safety, the community service department. You'll have the addition of a new community service officer to assist with code enforcement, animal control, and evidence. And that includes personnel costs at $74,000 and equipment at $5,000 and a vehicle for $45,000 for the total cost of $124,000. And then in our non-departmental department or IT department, we have new security software at $34,000. On the budget, you will see that as a property tax increment contingency cost. So if you're looking through the budget to find that, you'll see a piece of it in the budget under revenue for $150,000, because I'm, again, rounding up. And then those individual pieces you'll find in the community service department, the police department, and the non-departmental department, which is kind of funny to say, but that's where you'll find those pieces, and they are intended to stay there until a budget is passed with a certified tax increase and the state certifies it. The total cost is $158,000, which includes the property tax funded 5% increase of $150,000 and other funds coming to the table at $8,000 to pay for those things.
Thank you. And just to point out, the personnel cost, 74,000 is wages and benefits. It's not just wages.
Correct. It's wages and benefits.
Any questions for Peter?
So in going to the training I did last week, well, a couple of weeks ago, they were very clear to make sure that not a penny of that is spent in the fiscal year, next fiscal year. So I have seen the line items that you have in the budgets. Do you have restrictions, authorization restrictions? So no one, what controls do we have to make sure no one spends one penny of that money till it's certified?
So our internal controls for purchasing will essentially help that procedure along. So if somebody was to hire a position, for example, in order for us to sign off on it, I have to take a look at it and allow it to happen. We'll set it up as a PO in the budget. It's kind of weird because it's a personnel cost,
Yeah.
but we'll set it up as a PO that has to be approved by myself, by John, before it can move forward. And until that property tax certification happens, we will just not allow
Okay.
that to be.
So accidentally somebody submits a travel reimbursement, there's controls on that also then.
Right. If
Okay.
it points to any one of those accounts, we will reject those
Okay.
expenditures
Okay.
until it gets
Yeah.
certified.
That was just heavily emphasized in the training, of course. So, okay. Thanks, Peter.
And these two items that we're talking about, chief's not going to even go out to advertise for this position
Yeah.
until it's been approved.
Yeah.
So that's the big one. And then we just won't purchase the software, the security updates.
Yeah.
That's the other big one.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on? Okay, we'll move on to item number 8, which is the public hearing on the tentative budget. And again, before we open up the public hearing, in years past, so this is now I think my 9th year on the council doing this budget. Years past, when we do this, we have all these discussions ahead of time in May where, as you heard, this is very rough budget. We'd have the discussion and then we would say, here's our revenues, here's our expenses. How do we get those to equal? Come June, we'd figure out if we wanted to do a tax rate increase. Now with new state legislature and new laws, we had to come out 2 weeks ago and say we were going to do a tax rate increase before we even had the budget. As we keep going through this process over the next couple weeks, we may be able to whittle it down and get the rate lower. But 2 weeks ago, we had to say this is our high point, which is 5%. Neighboring cities are a lot higher than us. I've seen upwards of 55% and above. So I'd say we're a very moderate increase, but now is your time to come to the microphone. Oh, I've got a whole lot of lists here I'm supposed to read as well to make sure I say it correctly. So hold on just a minute. Yep. So first of all, I'd be looking for a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Dalpest to open the public
Second.
hearing and a second by Councilmember Carney. Okay, so now the public hearing's open. Here's the instructions for public participation.
You should vote.
To vote,
since
yeah.
it's
Oh, yeah,
motion.
that's a voice vote. All in favor of opening a public hearing? Any opposed? Okay, we have opened the public hearing. Sorry, that was in red. I'm looking at black lettering, so. Okay, so time is made available for anyone in the audience to address the council and or mayor concerning matters pertaining to the city budget or business. When a member of the audience addresses the mayor and or council, he or she will come to the podium and state his or her name and the city residing in. It will be the mark the 5 minutes each. May this question in all cases for some is that there are